we proceed, I check everybody. I think everybody can hear in the room and online because I've had a response. If you can't, shout now. The agenda pack with papers is available via ModGov or directly from the council website from the link which is sent out to members. When I invite somebody to speak, could you clearly state who you are if I don't introduce you, for the benefit of anybody who's listening to the meeting, so they can identify who is speaking, and ensure that you use microphones if you are in the room. And I'd like to warmly welcome any members of the public and the media who are joining us today in the room or online. The meeting is being recorded by the council. Finally, as agendas are now viewed electronically, could I kindly request that members and officers, where possible, refer to page numbers from the published agenda pack to assist all present in finding the appropriate information. In respect of housekeeping, there is no expected fire alarm, but should this happen, please follow Democratic Service colleagues and they will lead the way out to the car park at the rear of the building. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. I have apologies from Councillor Matt Martin. Have we got anyone else, Scott?
Thank you, Chair. Well, we have the apologies we've had from Councillor Martin. I know we have Councillor Johnson here as a substitute. We also have apologies from Councillor Kravis, and we have Councillor Strom here as substitute, and we have apologies from Councillor Boyden.
Thank you very much, and thanks very much, Dawn and Cara, for attending. And I do know who you are, Dawn. We have met. Right, agenda item 2. Minutes. Though these go back to the meeting we had on the 15th of January. That was the meeting before last, wasn't it? Don't we have to? I'm sorry, I'll ask you a question here. We have to approve the meeting. Oh yes. We have to approve the minutes of 2 meetings here. That there's the one from the 4th of December last year, and the 15th of January. So can we take the 4th of December minutes first? Are we looking at them? We've all got them in front of us. I haven't at the moment. Previous meetings. Can I ask for a proposer to accept the ones for the 4th? Dave, did you want to say something or propose?
Sorry, I did have something to raise. I think it's correction, although I'm very happy to be told it's not. But page 18 in 32, second bullet point, and we keep getting task and finish groups popping up in ways that just don't look right. But it's now got a water quality in Somerset task and finish group is now an officer-led project group. Is that right?
I'm not to my knowledge. I think you may have a point there. Henry led that group, so
we had a meeting this week, and only 2 of us turned up. And we, at the moment, suggested we put it on hold until the situation in the December the 19th white paper about the change in the phosphates and how it's being dealt with is both 1 confirmed in April and 2 put in place by September, when we should be able to feed into it. James Duval is talking to Natural England about the management of the EDPs as we speak.
I think the upshot of that is it's not an officer-led task and finish group.
I think I accept that as a correction. Can that be corrected in the minutes, Aishi? Thank you very much. Any other details from that December meeting that anyone would like to bring up before I ask for a proposer and seconder to accept the minutes? I hope you've all had. Thank you for a proposal, Henry. Anybody wish to say? Thank you, Steve Ashton. So proposed by Henry Hobson. House, sorry, Henry. Okay. So those are accepted. Let's move on to the minutes from the January meeting. And I've lost them, but you can scroll through them. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at them as well. Do I have any questions or any matters relating to those meetings? I'd just like to say at that point, I'd like to thank Henry for stepping in at short notice as I went down overnight rapidly with a dose of the flu, which even my wife concurred was not man flu. And and for the record, yeah, so he stepped in at short notice. For the record, I don't know if anyone else has had it, but it goes on a bit, and I'm still prone to coughing fits from time to time. I'm hoping not to, but if I do, I'm just going to leave the room because it's a bit intrusive. But anyway, apart from my ailments, is there anything else on those minutes that anyone would like to amend, correct, or question? I'll take a proposal then on that, please. Thank you, Councillor Hobhouse, and then Councillor Burt to second. Thank you. Right. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Anything we have other than being twin hatters and so on? Thank you. Before I move on, I should point out that we're going to have a swap round. Agenda item 6 and 7 will be swapped round for, I think, for the convenience of those presenting those two reports. Now we have public question time, and we've had a question in under item 4 from Mr. Stuart Carruthers, and he's not here today, so it's going to be read by Scott, who was forewarned about 2 minutes ago that this was the case. So, Scott, would you mind reading the question? Thank you.
Right, could I just note, we've had it circulated, we've all seen it. I'm not sure we need it read out. It's very long.
I was going to put 3 minutes on it. That's true.
Other committees I go to, if the person's not attended, it's just they get their written reply.
Well, I take that as a proposal.
And we all see it.
Yeah, I take that as a proposal. Sorry, yeah, Mike. Submitted. I think we ought to break with convention and read it, but I'm only going to give him 3 minutes for the sake of Councillor Rigby, who's very kindly attended this meeting this morning.
Chairman, it's not just Councillor Rigby.
Yeah.
Cara, have you seen? Thank you. No. Dawn, have you seen the question? No. So
okay. Thank you very much for that amendment. Point taken, but we'll read it. Thank you.
Chair, if it helps, I'm just trying to also put it on the screen so that people can view it. So the submission from Mr. Carruthers relates to appeal 3375539, and you'll see there relates to a report provided to planning relating to an appeal, and the copy is attached, and that relates specifically to an application at Oxon Lane, which is in the Taunton and Dean area. The statement goes on to say, it turns out that there are no designated Euro sites. Designation is completed through registration. The Secretary of State has lost their registers and none of the entries are registered as local land charges. The registration is important, as without registration, the designations cannot be corrected. Natural England has been tampering with its inventories and should be ignored. If Somerset was to carry out a habitat regulations assessment, it would screen out the need for any appropriate assessment. Somerset ecologists and Natural England won't accept that a HRA that identifies nothing needs to be done as the site is not designated and criteria 2 is not engaged. So why do an appropriate assessment? Natural England probably need to do a HRA to ensure that the increase in bird population is not damaging to people. They claim that the Somerset levels support about 75,000 birds. They excrete about as much phosphates and nitrogen as 15,000 people. The planners insist that there is a need for an appropriate assessment when this is not the case. They are continuing this stance at appeal. It is simply unfortunate that in the CG Fry case registers and inventories were not looked at, apart from Somerset saying there's no problem, and this is being endorsed by the CG Fry. I am confident that no weight should be given to Natural England's 2020 letter and believe you should require your CIEM staff to do an appropriate assessment based on the registers. Natural England and JNCC have inventories that inform the registrar. Eurosites are only registered by the Secretary of State and the Council. Once they have done their HRA, no Ramsar site and no phosphate problems.
Okay, thank you very much. We haven't got an officer to answer this case. I believe that letter came in on Friday, if I'm not mistaken. It was really late and has caused us a certain amount of consternation and panic for various reasons. But I think Henry is able to shed some light on it. So, if you'd like to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was up till 1 o'clock this morning doing my nerd bit. Technically, this guy is right in that, and if anyone is interested, I will give you the paperwork which I have in front of me here. We have on the register for the Ramsar site, there is a secretarial comment. I'm going to read it. Criterion 2 requires to specify the scientific names of those mentioned species considered vulnerable, endangered, or critically endangered. This needs to be included in the next update. And he is technically correct. All of the paperwork is wrong. The Ramsar site should never, the original application should never have been accepted. But the rules of the Ramsar site say that once it's been accepted, it can only be removed by the government. And so technically, the Ramsar site cannot be removed unless the government remove it. It would, in my opinion, be useful to get the correct people to do the correct paperwork. And in this case, the people that put the paperwork in are called the Joint Nature Conservation Committee in Peterborough in Cambridgeshire. And none of the species that should be registered are registered. And in particular for this committee, it's the dragonflies, which we've had a talk to this committee about the situation, and there are 3 on the red list.
Thank you. Now, I was going to, I think that's a very useful answer, an updated answer. We were thinking of throwing this into the any other business of this meeting to discuss further. I'm not sure that we need to, given that update, but, and it isn't, sorry, Scott.
Again, sorry, Chair, just to supplement, I was just wondering whether it'd be useful just to suggest that clearly in this instance, without Mr. Crothers being here, our standard practice would be for the relevant director to provide a written response to Mr. Crothers, and obviously for that written response to be shared with the committee for the benefit of the committee. So just as an action, if it helps, what we would take away as an action on behalf of the committee is for Chris Horn, who's the executive director of that area, to provide a written response, and obviously then to circulate that.
Thank you. I think if anything is forthcoming from this discussion and these issues, and once we've read the report, then we might bring this, we're open to bringing this back at a future meeting. I don't think there's a requirement now to open it up to any other business, but I'm prepared to listen to anybody that says they would like to discuss it further at this meeting. Councillor Rigby.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask then, so the allegation that's being made is that the Ramsar site has not been properly made and technically doesn't exist, is that right? And if so, what I didn't quite understand from what Councillor Hobhouse was saying, that his view of that allegation was.
The paperwork was not filled in by DEFRA. There is no registration document at DEFRA to say that they filled it in. The last available Ramsar site paperwork is dated, the original registration is June 97, and that has been accepted. And even though it wasn't put in correctly, it's still a Ramsar site because of the acceptance. And this paperwork that I've just read from about criteria 2 is dated, excuse me 1 second, the 11th of the 9th, 2007. The paperwork that the JCCN have on their website is dated 2008, but that has not been put into the Ramsar registration. Sorry to be so complicated.
Are you happy with that answer? No need to overdo it. I'll take a question from Councillor Ashton on this.
So, in simple terms, when you register a Ramsar site, you also are required to identify the species which are at risk from phosphates. And that's the bit that's missing.
Correct.
And so the site is registered, but it's a component that just hasn't been filled in. And so how do we measure whether the site's getting worse against these red list animals? Is that our responsibility, or is that, or are we only worried about the inputs and outputs of phosphates and not actually registering, looking at the impacts on these animals?
The registration documents have nothing about phosphates. They talk about red species, in other words, species on the list of endangered species. And the species, if you're interested, that are on here are in large numbers. So they talk about the Eurasian widgeon, the mute swan, the northern pintail, the northern shoveler, and that's it, all of which are quite common. And the highlighted red thing, which I read out to you, is talking specifically about red listed species, and they should have been in the registration document, but it doesn't alter the fact that that registration document, though it was wrong, the Ramsar Secretariat in Switzerland and Austria accepted it.
Okay, thank you. I think Dawn.
I don't want to just drag this on too far, but I'm trying to understand what next. And are we going to be investigating as a council what should be on a red list? Is that our responsibility? Is that down to other people? Will the Ramsar ever get reassessed? What can we do as a council to push for it to be reassessed or re-looked at by the government?
Scott would like to come in.
Yeah, just for the benefit of all members of the committee, it's probably useful again just to return to, I suggest there's a number of matters here which council officers do need to investigate on your behalf, and then for a response to be provided in terms of the legal position as the council understands it, and then for that legal position to be shared with you all for information. Because again, there are quite a number of statements made by Mr. Carruthers in here. And I think we just need to check exactly the position, and the position particularly in terms of the facts.
Thank you, and we'll bring it back to this. Whether I give it, this is a potential bombshell, but I think I've been thanks to Henry. I think I've been reassured that it's not quite so much of a problem as we thought it originally might be. So there will be a written report. So thank you very much for that. And I'd like to move on to item number 5, which is the outcome tracker, please. And it's got me or you to introduce this. Is it Ord Paul? Who's best to introduce this? I don't think it's us. Well, I'm going to ask you to then. Thank you very much, Scott.
Thank you, Chair. And again, you should be aware that certainly for all the scrutiny committees, we put in place a standardised approach in terms of tracking outcomes and actions, which the committee have agreed at their previous meetings. So you'll see as part of the agenda papers and on the website, this committee's outcome tracker is published, which identifies a series of actions and their latest position. Clearly, it's open for the committee to ask any questions or to explore any points, particularly in terms of progress.
Thank you. Any questions on that? Councillor Mansell.
Okay. Yeah, for November meeting, there have been a couple of things that are missed off, which were included in minutes that we've just approved. So there was a request at that time, one about quiet lanes. I'm actually sort of reasonably content that that one's been addressed, because since it's come up at the Active Travel LCN steering group, so information has arisen from a different source, so I think it's been addressed. There's another one on travel plans. Now, when we had the local transport plan to us, the consultation had included travel plans, and yet the report on the consultation, when it came to scrutiny, didn't include the travel plans. I was particularly interested in travel plans, and had wished to cover that, so raised it at the time. We were given officer assurance at the time that, I mean, and it got raised subsequently as well, also reflected in the minutes. We were given assurance that officers would look at it and report back. Now, in fact, what's happened is it's gone to the executive subcommittee and been adopted in the meantime, and we've not had our report back. As a result of that, I've got another suggestion, which I genuinely hope will be helpful, in that I think with travel plans, which is worth remembering, are sums of money. You know, the council's really short of money, and when we've got money, we want to spend it well. And there's an awful lot of people who don't think the money that comes in from travel plans is spent well. In fact, you know, can anyone think of an outcome? And yet tens of thousands are often, you know, are generally awarded for each travel plan, for each large major development. There's massive sums of money here, which I don't believe we're well using. It's been questioned by cycle groups, by bus groups. A developer has questioned it. I looked at this and thought, what are these things are achieving? Could I suggest that we have it's maybe a short task and finish group. I'm thinking of something short. It's possibly a spotlight review. Not that I entirely know what a spotlight review is, but it sounds as though it's shorter, and it often sits alongside task and finish groups. So I would expect one, probably two meetings would be enough to cover this. You know, get some evidence in from people who are interested in it, definitely from the officers who are involved in putting these travel plans out, and I understand monitoring the outcomes, although I've never seen the results of that. So could I suggest that we have that? If that's deemed okay, I would suggest the way we should bring some terms of reference to the next meeting and set it up after that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good request, Dave. I think one of the issues as somebody who sits on planning, I'm often wondering, you know, we expect this money to be paid, and some of these plans are in such a long time down the road, we may never know whether they get implemented or not. And I think we do need more of a fail-safe to ensure that these travel plans are in place and are acted upon. But I've got to, yeah, did you want to come in on that, Mike Rigby?
Thank you very much, Chair. I think what Councillor Mansell has suggested is a good idea. There's a risk with travel plans, if we're not careful, that they get used by developers as a means to try and influence practice, as a way of avoiding spending on infrastructure. And these documents need to be treated as live documents. They need to be reviewed. We need to understand if what has been proposed and accepted is actually working. I remember seeing a travel plan about 15 years ago where one of the means of encouraging people to walk more was that the developer was going to hand out free umbrellas to the residents. So some of this stuff can be a little bit nonsensical, and we need to make sure that, particularly some of the older travel plans, that they still have some merit and don't need updating. So I think it's a really good point. We do need to make sure that those plans are kept up to date and that they're not being used as a means to avoid spending on infrastructure with perhaps frivolous suggestions.
Got Richard Wilkins in the room. Councillor Wilkins, did you want to add anything to this? See you there, Richard. So if you don't mind coming to the desk on this occasion, and thanks very much.
I've got not much more to add to what's already been said, but obviously these documents are important, that that they are done and they are seen to be a sensible way forward for the council. So yeah, I'm all in favour of ongoing review. So yeah, happy with that.
Thank you very much. So you put a proposal on the table, haven't you, Councillor Mansell, about, oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Burt.
I suggest as well, the problem with travel plans and the trouble with reference to developers is developers have gone. That's the point with these things, that developers have gone from site and there's no enforcement after that. There's no double check. So if we're going to look at this, we need to look at plans where the developer has moved off because no one's responsible for them anymore, and live ones for ones that the developer is just about to move, to see where enforcement actually comes into this. Because if there's no enforcement, then there's no follow-up with this.
Thank you. Councillor Rigby.
Thanks. It's worth just remembering that travel plans don't only apply to residential developments, they also apply to commercial, where there are normally ongoing management in place. So for example, Richard Hewish College has a travel plan, and so there's no difficulty in finding someone to deal with to make sure it's updated.
Right, thanks. Before I take this on, there was a query in Councillor Mansell's proposal that of what actually was a spotlight review, and I wonder if anybody in the room could clarify before we take a vote on it what a spotlight review might be. Nobody wants to. Okay, sorry.
I mean, spotlight reviews are generally a single focus, whereas task and finish groups are recognised as being a period, well, a series of reviews under the umbrella of a single group. So task and finish groups generally have multiple meetings. A spotlight review is a single meeting where you focus on a particular issue. And again, the outcomes from that could be that members are assured, feel that everything is working well, or conversely, that scrutiny members feel that there could be the need for some improvements, and therefore the spotlight review could result in some recommendations back to the committee recommending. So you can find spotlight reviews can lead to the establishment of a task and finish group, or for additional entries on a committee's work programme. They're generally intended to be quite succinct reviews of particular topics.
Right, thank you. With that in mind, is there anything you want to add, Dave?
No, I don't think so. It's been interesting comments from everyone. Thank you. I think a spotlight might do it, as long as it could. I think one meeting might just be not quite enough, but I suspect it probably could. 2 meetings probably would do it, but that might become apparent as the terms of reference are developed.
I mean, if it's helpful, I mean, you could start with a spotlight review, and one of the conclusions of the spotlight review could be then to recommend the establishment of a task and finish group, potentially. I'm not saying on this topic, but as an approach, spotlight reviews can be used to provide some assurance, and if the committee feel that further work is needed, that then could lead to a task and finish group. So that may be sensible. But again, it's open to the committee which of the options you'd like to. You could move straight to a task and finish group, and therefore ask officers to develop a terms of reference and bring those back. Or you could take the initial step of, let's have a spotlight review first.
Yes, please answer.
Okay. That's helpful. I think we do need to hear from the officers, and understand just what actually goes on. And I don't feel, that I understand too much. And there may be more going on than is apparent to many of us. So I feel a spotlight review to get into it and decide, how much work is needed here. That could be the good first step. And yeah.
Please advise me on this. If we're talking about we need we need an officer, and do we need volunteers from this committee for a spotlight review, or will an officer go away and build the framework and come back to us?
I mean, typically how a spotlight review would work, that would be a private workshop open to the members of this committee, and effectively then relevant officers would be invited to both prepare and attend that meeting in order to respond, and you then use that workshop for the purpose of looking at, are there any areas for improvement? Do you feel additional work may be needed in this area? And if so, that could lead to recommendations like establishing a task and finish. So in practical terms, if the committee would like to undertake a spotlight review, we, as officers in Democratic and Governance Services, will take away that as an action. If that's what the committee would like, we would establish a workshop, engage with the relevant officers in the council, and enable that workshop to happen. And then we could then report back to the committee, either as part of the outcome tracker or as a specific item if the outcome of that workshop is that a task and finish group needs to be established, because that would have to be reported here. So in practical terms, we would take those actions and establish that spotlight review on your behalf.
Dave?
I do think it's important that we hear from some people outside, and I've seen comments from groups outside, and including a developer, where the developer would, take part, but they did make comments in a public meeting, which I found interesting. But as I say, cycle bus groups, I think they would be interested. So as long as we could have them in, for me, that's important, but obviously interested other thoughts.
Reid?
Thank you. Well, if that was a proposal, I mean, I'd like to second it. I mean, in Planning East, we certainly have put a lot of emphasis on active travel plans, and we've asked for extra monies on quite a few developments. I would like to know where that money's been paid, or where it goes to, and whether it's been used properly. So I think it's an excellent proposal, and I look forward to this workshop, Chair.
I take that as a proposal, and but just to clarify, an officer will be delegated to take this on our behalf, and then come back to us with a workshop presentation suggestion. Yeah.
In effect, as an action, we would take away from this meeting the brief to establish a workshop, to engage with relevant officers, to obviously then circulate that brief and scope with the members of this committee to say that that workshop will be held on X date. This is its purpose. So these are the officers attending. These are any other parties who are attending. And then after that workshop, we would then report back to a committee meeting.
Got it. Okay. Are we all clear on what we're voting for? Thank you. In that case, and also I'd like to point out that it would be great if the workshop were online, of course, which I'm sure it was intended to be, but we don't need to bring everybody into the room for this. Sorry, oh yeah, Rob. Okay.
Just we've had the invitation to the workshop. I'm just hoping we'll be able to fill in up questions before the workshop actually happens, so that officers will be aware of our concerns or interests or so on.
Yeah, I hope that be noted through the minutes. Thank you very much. Can I ask for those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much for that. Have we got any more on the outcome tracker that we'd like to question, bring up? Rob Reid.
So sorry again. I want to thank you, Chair, because I did bring up a request for the rights of way to be looked at, and thank you for your email as I sent you, and I appreciate this may not turn up very soon, but I'm hoping it stays on the list to be looked at the earliest convenient.
Yes, thank you for the email. And this is something you're very keen on, Henry. Would you like to add anything to that?
100%. And at the end of the day, this has been on this list for about 6 months now, as members of this committee know, and we really need to get it dealt with, put to bed before we form a joint committee in May.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's to add to the outcome tracker? It's already on. They just wanted to reiterate. Sorry, I can't find it. Yes, deferred. Yeah, okay, thank you very much. I'd like to re-emphasise we'd like to see that brought forward as soon as possible. course, we do have limited time, but in this particular year, do we have any other issues pertaining to the outcome tracker? No? Then I think I'm free to move on. This is going a bit too quickly. I'm sure we'll make up for it later on. Now, we've come to item 6, but we're moving it, we're swapping agenda item 7 with 6. So we're now on to the Connecting Devon and Somerset CDS Broadband Delivery Programme. And I'm inviting Paul Hickson, Service Director for Development Skills and Climate, to introduce the item. We've got, this is going to be presented by, I believe, Amanda Williams. Is she online? Amanda is, I can see. Hello, Amanda.
I'm going to introduce a bit, but I'm actually going to pass over to my colleague, Matt Barrow, who is the Community Engagement Officer on the CDS programme. He's actually a Devon colleague.
Thank you very much. And Matt, I can't see.
I am
you're,
here.
You're there.
I
You're
am
there.
here. I am.
Lovely. Okay. Well, thank you very much for being with us today, and please proceed.
A pleasure. Does Paul want to introduce the item?
Yes, you're quite right. I'm rushing us along. Paul, would you like to introduce
I'll
it?
be very brief, Chairman, and thank you for revising the agenda so that we could accommodate this early as well. So just to recap effectively, in as much as that at our December meeting, there was a brief discussion about connecting Devon and Somerset as a programme and the broadband infrastructure matters. And we agreed that an information item would be brought forward to a future agenda of the committee, which is obviously the reason for today's item. You have a written paper that went around with the agenda, and Matt and Amanda, who are two colleagues who work on the Connecting Devon and Somerset programme, will run a brief presentation for you as well, and obviously be happy to answer any questions. Just to say that Connecting Devon and Somerset is a long-standing local government-led partnership with a kind of a mission of supporting and enabling digital connectivity in areas that the market alone isn't able to provide for. Somerset has worked collaboratively with our partners in Devon, and indeed councils to our north in North Somerset and Bath and North East Somerset over the years under the umbrella of the Connecting Devon and Somerset programme. We're coming towards the end of that programme in terms of contracted delivery, and as the report describes, the government is through its agency BD UK looking in the future through a programme called Project Gigabit to directly contract future delivery. So there's a kind of a transition effectively going on here, where the remainder of the delivery under CDS will happen and Project Gigabit is being delivered by the government, which colleagues will explain more of in detail. But it's really just to give you a little bit of context about the programme and the reason for the item today. If I hand over to, I think Matt's going to lead on the presentation.
I am.
Thank you.
Super, thank you, Paul. I promised Paul that I would keep this as brief as I possibly could, and I said I would do 4 or 5 slides. I actually have 11, but just to reassure, the majority of them are maps, which I'll take you through, and they show coverage patterns. So it is essentially a relatively brief presentation, and we can then move into questions. So, a brief introduction to the programme. As Paul's indicated, the partnership of local authorities, and we have delivered on what historically has been the government's Superfast programme established back in 2014, something like that. And our focus is on premises that sit below speed brackets of 30 meg. And as you'll see as we go along, there are 2 interleaving targets. One is about raising properties that have the slowest and increasingly unusable speeds of 30 meg. The other is about raising properties up to gigabit capable speeds. As Paul indicated, the subsidy regime is only involved in those areas where the market has deemed it to be uncommercial to deliver to. So we are a gap funded model, and we pick up the difference between what the commercial sector deems is as far as they can go in terms of costs, and then the subsidy kicks in to go to the harder to reach premises. We establish which those premises are through a very boring thing called the open market review, but it's essential because it provides the answer to that question globally across the UK as to which premises are deemed to be commercial and which aren't. And when a property is accepted as being in the open market review as being delivered to commercially, that's a binary decision. It means that we cannot use subsidy to go there. A quick whiz through technology, just in case I refer to any terms. We've worked with a number of technologies over the years. Initially, fibre to the cabinet, which, as it says, you run fibre out to the green roadside box, and then the broadband travels the last part of the journey on the existing copper. Much more prevalent these days is fibre to the premise, where fibre runs the whole way from the exchange or the point of network connect to your property. But there is also fixed wireless, which is as a technology which is actually having something of a resurgence because it's now capable of delivering gigabit speeds. It has got much faster over the last 5 or 6 years. And satellite, obviously, with Starlink and Amazon Leo and others, remains part of the mix. We will talk through challenges because the programme, along with any infrastructure programme, has had its challenges, but I think probably come to those during the discussion section. I'll also take you through the programme's coverage, what we've achieved so far, what we are currently building, and what is planned and what is likely to happen in the future. I touched on the Superfast programme, and Paul also referenced the Project Gigabit. It's important to recognise that Project Gigabit is targeted. So the Superfast programme was targeted at achieving 95% at least superfast coverage across the UK by, and forgive me, I can't remember what date, but 2019 or something. That's largely been hit. The programme that supersedes that is Project Gigabit, which is about achieving 1,000 meg per second, or pretty much fibre to the premise for 99% of the population by 2032. However, it's also worth bearing in mind that, as with the Superfast programme, you can achieve a national target of 99% coverage, and in the Southwest, we might only be at 94, 95, averages being what they are. And then just take you on to future options. So as of now, this is the coverage, the CDS program. This is the subsidised build that we have delivered across the CDS region. And I recognise it looks a bit of a Jackson Pollock. It's a lot of dots. Those are essentially a number of maps. And so if we just build through those, under our first program, we worked with Openreach using fibre to the cabinet, and we are predominantly rurally focused, but under phase 1, we were looking at the edges of market towns and then rural villages and starting to move into the hamlets. I'll come on to the figures in a second. That's what our coverage looked under phase 1. We then moved to working with a company, Airband, who did an early trial of fixed wireless on both Dartmoor and Exmoor on our National Parks project. We started to do some fibre work with Openreach as a result of a thing called gain share, which essentially was a mechanism within the first contract whereby Openreach paid back money from subsidy as a result of their increased business, if you like, as a result of the subsidy they'd been paid. And we did good work going up onto the moor into Delverton and around with Liscombe and Brompton Ralph, that sort of area. It was very small, but it was very, very rural. We also have a contract with Airband to deliver fibre into the part of Somerset that you can see here. And the reason that there is that distinction is that we let a number of different contracts back in 2020. Airband bid for the geography that you can see here, which is broadly former Taunton Deane, West Somerset, and half of Sedgemoor. And then Wessex Internet, another fibre company based on the border into Dorset, picked up the contract to deliver more of the South Somerset side of things. So at the moment, the school's on the doors. If you look at the baseline figures for premises in Somerset, around about 338,000. Our initial forays with fibre to the cabinet, fixed wireless and some early fibre, along with the commercial build, took us up to about 307,000. These are all figures relating to superfast. So that's 307,000 properties at least 30 meg per second. We're currently working with, I was going to say working with both Airband and Wessex to conclude the contracts of the properties that they still have in build. Airband will be building until September next year, completing their contracts. Wessex have just finished, so they have just hit there, and Amanda can correct me on the total, but it's around 4,000 premises that they're delivering.
4,190.
Thank you. Very precise. You can see the difference between the commercial build under the earlier phases of this and now. Commercial build has slowed to a crawl, and the projections, and it's simply a reflection of the fact that things just become so much more costly as you move into rural areas, particularly if you're building with fibre. So we have a projected in build currently completing of about 7,500, and that means that there is still a quantum, of at least 23,000 premises that, when all is said and done, will still remain below 30 meg per second. So that moves us into Project Gigabit territory. And as I say, the target is to raise 99% of the UK to gigabit speeds by 2032. That's a deadline that has shifted recently. At the last comprehensive spending review, it moved from 2030 to 2032. As a result of the way that this is working, there will be significant overbuild. And I'll come on to what that looks like, but that just basically means building to people who have already had an uplift in their speeds. Our argument has always been, as CDS as a local body, and most of the other local bodies around the UK, that Project Gigabit should be outside in. So you start with the hardest to reach properties and you work your way back, and you particularly weight the subsidy towards the hardest to reach properties, and then you scale it back as you get closer to towns. That didn't actually happen with Project Gigabit, so Project Gigabit is an inside-out program. The indicative budget was 5 billion, but at the moment only 1.9 billion has actually been released by Treasury, and BDUK is currently pushing through their latest business plan to Treasury to try and secure more of that subsidy to enable either additional contracts or additional procurements or additional voucher schemes. 3 different kinds of contract. In our region, we have one regional contract, which is run by Wessex, and I'll show you where these are in a second. And then the rest of the coverage in Somerset, as well as Devon, is through the national contract, which is held by Openreach. And we'll also come on to the voucher piece. So under Project Gigabit, Wessex Internet will be building these blue dots, so you can see an expansion of their current contract area, both further into the middle of Somerset and up into former Mendip. For Openreach, these dark red dots essentially show you where they will be building fibre, but all of these properties are properties that the CDS program has already uplifted to super fast speeds. That's what we mean by overbuild. The quantum of new build, so build going to properties that are under 30 meg per second, as you will see from the dots here, is much, much smaller. Conscious of time, I just wanted to run through this. So it's really important that we're clear that whilst the call off for the Openreach contract, which covers from Baines and North Somerset down through Somerset and across the majority of Devon, is 37,000 premises. 28,000 of those, nearly 29,000 of those, are already at super fast speeds. And it's actually only 8,000 of them that we would see as addressing those premises in the greatest need. The premises that we hear from, all of us collectively on a day-to-day basis, who are experiencing real difficulty. In Somerset, and I do have the figures for Devon, but in Somerset, this is even more acute, so that you'll see of the 8,000 premises that is addressed by Openreach, only just over 900 of those are actually sub-superfast. The majority is overbuilt. Excuse me. So for the remainder of those properties that are still on the slower speeds and inevitably in the more rural areas, commercial build, I would largely discount, to be honest. By and large, the majority of the altnet industry have stopped building without subsidy, and Openreach are increasingly, certainly by the end of this year, will be pivoting and putting all of their focus onto subsidised build as well. So Project Gigabit becomes ever more important. You have the existing procurements, but there is also the Gigabit voucher scheme, which has been largely closed, apart from a brief window of about 5 weeks at the beginning of last year. It's been closed for the last 2 years, certainly in our area and across most of the UK. That reopened 2 weeks ago, and we are currently working with suppliers to ensure that we maximise the opportunity for additional build in Devon, Somerset, Baines and North Somerset within what is a limited window. So it's reopened, will remain reopened for applications until August, and then suppliers will have until March 28 to complete their build. But we are quite confident that we will be putting forward fairly substantial volumes of properties under that. There's always the possibility of running our own regional scheme, but it requires money. We could let regional contracts, but that involves money, and that is within the mix of conversations going on with BD UK at the moment, whilst they, under Project Gigabit, wish to retain the contractual control over Project Gigabit. There is scope for further discussion about these options. And we also recently, well, relatively recently, ran a program called Mobile Boost, which provided grants for people to improve their indoor mobile signal. And there is a possibility that this might be coming back. I think that is quite enough from me. Questions?
Matt, thank you very much. Excellent. Good to have that resume, and you certainly didn't run over time at all. So I'm going to open it up to questions if you wouldn't mind remaining online, because
no, of course not. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Hayward-Burt first.
Okay. Can I just ask for clarification in a second? There's two questions really on overbuild. So that means that you're going back to properties that have already got good internet access, and you're not going to properties that don't have good internet access. If I've got that correct, why do we do that? How do you choose your priorities as to where you go next? Is it governed by money, or is it governed by the number of people, so your percentages go up? So if the members of the committee here ask for a list of where you don't have coverage and where you're going next, is there such a list? Thank you.
So 2, possibly 3 questions there. To the first part, yes, you're absolutely correct. Except insofar as you said you are going back to properties. Strictly speaking, BD UK and Project Gigabit are going back to properties that have already been uplifted through the Superfast programme. That is not something that we would necessarily agree with, but it's a political decision that has been taken at a national strategic level. Our argument was always that you continue to focus on those properties that have the poorest speeds. And as I say, on the outside-in approach, you work backwards to those properties that already have 30, 40, 50 or 60 meg. To the question as to how those properties are chosen, Under Project Gigabit, there are the procurements were basically run on the basis of you identify all properties that for whom there is no commercial plan and for whom their current speeds are below 1,000 meg, and you then offer them out to the market in geographical bundles for the market to bid. There would tend to be an indication as to the level of funding available, and you essentially go out to market, or BDUK went out to market on behalf of government to procure contracts and secure the largest amount of coverage possible for the grant that was available. And I think your third point around lists. So we have the ability to provide data on those properties that it kind of depends what you want. I mean, data is really important. Well, it's critical, obviously, within this whole piece, and particularly ensuring that individual properties don't get missed out for reasons of data inaccuracy. But we know where across the region properties are that sit below 30 meg. We also know where across the region there are properties that will sit below 1,000 meg, and for whom there is no commercial plan. They're not in our subsidised plans, and they're not in BDUK's subsidised plans. And those are the 23,000 that I identified on the slides. So we do have those. We have them. We can provide them by constituency. We can provide them by former district. That's easier to do because that's the way that the original data construction was set up. But we can also provide them by division, by ward, and even by parish. It just becomes more and more complicated the lower the level of geography you go to. But we can do that.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got Dave, Dawn, and then Henry at the moment to speak. So we'll start with Dave Mansell, please.
Okay, thank you. And hi, Matt. You know I take.
Hi, Dave.
Hi. You know I take a close interest in this, not least because I represent an area which is in the 5%. A lot of properties, rural area, which has not been well served. I know you work hard and are always very helpful with information supply. Firstly, just slightly to complete this, and I'm not looking for a comment, but we should, I do feel we need to note that there's been, you know, what I'm calling failures in the programme from CDS rolling out. There's been some good things happen, but some of the bigger contracts have failed. Not been mentioned is in the West area, the contract was awarded to GigaClear to start with, and they ended up just doing a very little amount before that one collapsed. And really what has happened with Airband, with the award to them, that collapsed as well. They de-scoped they were allowed to de-scope much of the area, and what was originally promised by the CDS contracts with Airband and previously GigaClear haven't been delivered. So what can we do? And you pointed to some of this, and both of us are well aware that the voucher scheme in the sort of Exmoor, Upper Tone, and in the North Devon area has been very helpful, because we've been really fortunate to have a small local supplier who's been interested in rolling out a scheme. But they are small; they can only go so far, and understandably have to proceed carefully, and then don't bite off more than they can chew, unlike it appears some of their bigger competitors. So really pleased to hear the voucher schemes reopened, because that looks like the best opportunity. It is actually the thing that's delivered best in my area, and you know, and with a company that's actually been geared up to work in a rural area and provide a service and understand all the challenges and difficulties. I'll come to something more specific, but just mention that. I guess I'm interested in wireless. That's been mentioned. You know, what can get the service sorted out. I will say I would discard Starlink. One, it's expensive, and perhaps it's enough for that. There are other problems with it as well, but let's just say it's much more expensive than other routes. It's only for those who can afford it. So a bit more on voucher scheme, a bit more on wireless. And what I think we need to notice is what is said in the report, sort of page 65 at the top there on airband. They were going to deliver to over 55,000 premises. It's now going to be half of that. So whatever it is, 28,000 who have now been de-scoped and are sort of having to see, you know, how else they can be covered. Now, I've just had a question on that, you know, who is being left behind? And I think that would be really helpful. I have to say, it's a question I've asked many times before. So I'm really pleased to hear if that information can be supplied. And I think that means to be a major ask from this committee that we do get the level of detail, at least the level of detail that was previously in the airband contracts, which, if I remember correctly, did have mapping and so on, and we could understand who was in and who was out, and most were going to be in, and that doesn't feel like the case now. And then final question, which I think is important, the mop up of what's left, and there's clearly going to be quite a lot of left people without a decent broadband service, which is increasingly problematic for those households. I mean, when you look at the targets, 95% in the past for superfast, you know, well, that means 5% not covered. And those 5% are nearly all in the rural areas. So it's a lot more than 5% in the rural areas. It's many times that. So, you know, the rural areas have really been badly treated by this. I don't think I'm too reassured by 99% by 2032. That's still a long time away. So, and that's the final question. So the plan at the moment from BD UK, from the government, seems to be a final mop-up. Now, Somerset's coming really late to that because our previous contracts have failed. We're now being added in to others. When will Somerset be covered by this open reach mop-up that comes at the end? Will we have to wait till 2030 or afterwards? I have a feeling I know what the answer is, but interested to hear what you have to say. I hope that was clear enough, and look forward to your response.
Okay, Matt, did you note all those questions?
I think so, Chair.
Yeah, have a go.
Okay.
And Dave will come back to you if there's anything else.
So I think combining the first and the last on the voucher piece, I would agree. I think people have differing views around the voucher scheme. Some people think that there's some more security in being part of a larger contract, and the voucher scheme can seem to be smaller and piecemeal. I don't see it that way. I think history has shown that there isn't a huge amount of security in larger contracts because they can go bang, and the voucher scheme has always been very effective at a tactical level to go in and increasingly one needs to be quite forensic about where the delivery goes, and the voucher scheme is particularly helpful to that. I think it's worth pointing out that at the bottom of a lot of this is money, and the economics of the industry are kind of critically important to understand. That has been the Achilles heel of the contracts that have either collapsed or been scaled back in the case of Airband. But I think it's interesting to note that BD UK have already had, I believe I'm correct in saying, 8 Project Gigabit contracts handed back to them by various suppliers across the country, because the economics of this are really, really, really difficult. One of the things that's good about the voucher scheme is that the the stated banding for subsidy allows for individual subsidy for individual premises to go up to £4,500. Now, when you bear in mind, without going into anything that's particularly commercially confidential, the level of subsidy for the airband contracts was probably closer on £1,000, simply because those contracts were framed earlier and were framed using subsidy that had been agreed earlier. As time moves on, costs increase significantly. As you move out into rural areas, costs increase exponentially, and there was no sufficient flexibility within our superfast contracts to increase the amount of subsidy, even if we had it, which we didn't. So ultimately, for any of this to be successful, you need providers on the ground who are prepared to build, who understand how to build and can build in rural areas. And I think the voucher scheme is particularly exciting because it allows suppliers to, as you said, Dave, at a smaller level, like technological, and we have a couple of others, we could do with a lot more. Smaller suppliers who are happy to go in and build 30 properties in a way that a larger company just simply may not feel it was worth their while. That's one of the real advantages, as well as the higher level of subsidy available through the voucher scheme. You referenced fixed wireless. As with all technologies, strengths and weaknesses, fixed wireless is arguably quicker to deploy, arguably cheaper to deploy, and these days is gigabit capable. And the reason for emphasizing that is that essentially the overarching budget for Project Gigabit has one fundamental predicate, which is that it's technology agnostic, but the technology must be capable of delivering gigabit speed, so 1,000 megabits per second. And if it can't do that, it can't qualify for subsidy. Now, whether or not you agree with that as a strategy, that is the national strategy. And therefore, the fact that gigabit fixed wireless is now a thing and has been adjudged to be gigabit capable means that it is eligible for subsidy. You can use vouchers to pull together a voucher scheme. The disadvantages of fixed wireless are really fundamentally around line of sight. You need to be able to see the mast, and that can be impacted by, in some instances, something as simple as a large tree. So line of sight is a pretty critical one, and if the mast is over the other side of a hill, you just simply won't see any benefit. So strengths and weaknesses, but it's very exciting, and it's particularly exciting in rural areas. Satellite, I would have agreed with everything you said up to about 6 months ago, but in fairness, costs of satellite have come down significantly in recent months. Nevertheless, I don't think we would see satellite as part of any particularly coherent strategy, simply because there are capacity issues. And those capacity issues essentially mean that the more people who use it, the slower the speeds you get. And I think there are some real question marks over the overall capacity of the current satellite constellations out there, particularly Starlink and Amazon Leo, as to whether they can actually provide sufficient capacity to deliver to those properties for whom it might be too expensive to subsidize fiber build. So there's an awful lot of load balancing going on, if you like. I have a feeling that I missed one, but I did my best. If you'd like to come back on.
Yeah, Dave Mansell.
I will do, and perhaps I'll just take the opportunity to reinforce the ask and make it clear that it's already been mentioned. I think this committee would really pleased to see the maps that could be provided, or however it's provided, of properties who will not be covered by superfast and broadband. And I'm sure we also wish to urge you to do all you can with this hodgepodge of different schemes to try and close those gaps, try and get people covered and provided at least with superfast. And I hope that be a clear request from this committee. The final question was to do with the mop-up and the open reach contracts. And if the gaps aren't closed, when those people who at the moment have got no prospect of being served, how long are they going to have to wait before open reach might get to them?
So it's very open question, Dave. In the short term, the voucher scheme provides opportunities for many of those properties that fell out of the airband contract, provided there are providers who are prepared to go to those geographies. So a proportion of those premises will be picked up in that way. BDK is currently pushing. They tell us that they have completed their business plan and their ask from Treasury for the next comprehensive spending review period. That business case is, we spoke to them a week ago, it was with the Secretary of State for sign-off before submission to Treasury. So BDUK are doing all they can to extract more of the indicative 5 billion that has been released to date. Without that, neither they nor we are really in a position to move forward much other than work on the voucher scheme, because you need the budget. But they are trying to unlock additional sums from that budget, and with that will then flow procurements which will target including those properties that came out of the airband schemes. But let us not forget that there were the airband contracts only went so far, and there was still a large quantum of properties that had not made it into the airband contracts because they were even harder to reach than the properties that airband was going for. So it's being addressed on a number of different levels. And yes, absolutely, our sole focus is on increasing the levels of coverage where we possibly can through whatever mechanism we can, and most importantly, or as importantly, as quickly as we can. And that's another area where the voucher scheme does have some advantages, because if you look to go for a contract, then you have to fashion the procurement, which can take 6 months, run a procurement, which in our experience takes a minimum of 12 months. Then once you have secured your contractor, assuming your procurement is successful, you then need usually a period of about 12 months for survey and design before you get boots on the ground. So whilst it's welcome to hear that BDUK are pushing their case for additional funding, there is a danger that we won't actually see any benefit from that, even if they are successful for 2.5 years.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, David. So on to Councillor Dawn Johnson, please.
Hi, Matt. Thank you very much for that update. I am still trying to get my head around why we would be overbuilding. It just makes no sense, especially when we're in Somerset with so many houses not having sufficient connection. Is this committee able to lobby? Are you doing lobbying? I think you said it was the government who are making these decisions to overbuild. It just makes no financial sense whatsoever when there are so many properties in need. If you can give me any sense of how they have come to that decision and why it is considered okay to overbuild, I'd really appreciate understanding that some more. The other, sorry, would you like to answer that one first?
No, I'm entirely in your hands whether you want to ask both questions or more than two.
Just carry on, I think, Dawn.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll carry on. So the other thing I was slightly confused by, I think earlier in the presentation you said that where there was commercial contracts, CDS couldn't step in with subsidies. But then I think later on you said that because of non-delivery of some people like Openreach, you were now working with them to deliver where they had contracts but not delivered. So I just wanted some clarity on that, please. I mean, I live in outside Taunton. They haven't delivered in towns as well as not delivering in rural areas, because work that was supposed to be happening in my area has not ever come to fruition. And I mean, it doesn't feel right that we are now setting in to subsidise Openreach who haven't delivered what they were expected to deliver. But, you know, that's by the by. But I just wanted to be clear, are you picking up work they didn't deliver now or not? Or how will that be addressed from work that Openreach had on their books that they didn't deliver? If you are not picking up if you are not picking that up, who will be picking that up? Hugely concerned that there are still all these rural areas without any connection, but even it's not, as I say, only rural areas, and just really trying to understand how we are programming the best use of the money to support the people who really need it the most.
Matt.
Okay, so under the circumstances, it's probably quite difficult for me to say on your first question. Speaking as an individual, not an employee of Devon County Council, I couldn't agree with you more. The idea of overbuild is, I mean, it's ludicrous and it's borderline repugnant, I would say, speaking as an individual. I think the reason that it has come about is because it's kind of, that's what happens when you put percentage targets on things. So if you want to get to 99%, you have to do 99%. So there's always a tendency to do the easy bits first, if you like, all of that kind of stuff. However, I think it's important to remember, to point out, Project Gigabit is the title for the program. The program was originally entitled the Outside In program and was predicated on starting in the hardest to reach rural areas and working back. And at some point over time, that changed and it became called Project Gigabit. It had percentage targets added to it, which were one of the recommendations that most local bodies like CDS made. Do not put percentage targets on it, because we saw the kinds of behaviours that it drove under the Superfast programme, but we were not successful in advancing those views. So yes, I couldn't agree with you more. It's really difficult to see that level of effort and subsidy going into areas which, albeit at some point, will need gigabit speeds, but actually the speeds that they have for the time being are perfectly acceptable. To your second question, if I understood it correctly, for properties that were in any given contract that for whatever reason fell out, they therefore then become eligible for subsidy under Project Gigabit, be that through either being added into contracts which have already been procured, or through the voucher scheme, or through new procurements, depending on how Project Gigabit and BDUK's case for additional funding goes with Treasury. So yes, once it's not the case that, you know, that property is marked for life because it was originally supposed to be picked up this way and therefore you can never do anything with it. Once it comes out of a contract, it then becomes, it goes back into the pool of properties that are eligible for funding. Does that answer? I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Dawn.
Yeah, no, that does. The second question is answered. Thank you, Matt. I'm just still wondering, are we doing any lobbying or any work as CBS or as a Somerset Council regarding this overbuild? It'd be nice to know that we are challenging in some ways on this.
So I think there are three key areas of influence that I think we need to affect, and we are having conversations about the best way of making those points, but they are essentially around supporting BDUK's business case to Treasury to ensure that further funding is unlocked for Project Gigabit, and the Treasury doesn't try and limp through to 2030 without spending any more on this topic. The second is the voucher scheme is formally due to end in March 2028, and it is envisaged that there will be no successor programme. We think that's wrong, and we think that it has proven to be really useful tool in the armory of getting particularly remote, rural, small communities connected. So I think there's a strong case for advocating on that basis. And the third element is one that we haven't touched on, but it's critically important, and particularly in our part of the world. So I've referenced on a number of occasions the 99%. So BDUK, Project Gigabit, target of 99% now, currently by 2032. Now, obviously that leaves 1%, which is traditionally referred to as the final 1% or very hard to reach premises. Now, those properties do not fall within the purview of BDUK. And that is because BDUK is a delivery body. So they take government strategy and government subsidy and deliver on it. And there is no strategy for the final 1%, the very hard to reach premises. There has been discussion about the creation of a strategy for very hard to reach premises since 2022, if not earlier, but no strategy has emerged. Without strategy, there is no funding from Treasury, and BDUK, quite rightly as a delivery body, have said we have nothing to deliver against because we don't know what the strategy is. So the third point of lobbying, it's really important that we lobby for government to establish a strategy for the very hard to reach premises rather than a one-liner, of which there is always a danger, which is they can get satellite. So those are the three lobbying points that we are talking about, but that I think it would be useful for this committee to consider.
Thank you very much, Matt. I've now got Councillor Hobhouse.
Thank you, Matt. That was a very good presentation. Somewhere in this council, we own a directional aerial because I bought it for South Somerset in 2015, and we had it out on a number of rural sites to pick up mobile data, and it worked extremely well. I don't know where it is, but we probably need to find it at some stage, Paul, and offer it to people in the very rural areas, because it's quite easy to get round the obstacles if you mount it on your house, because you can move it along the house, across the house, to get rid of the obstacle before you get to your tower. The second point I want to make is that in the rural areas that got connected to fibre to the open box, the age of the copper, and I apologise to this committee, it is again one of my nerd subjects, the age of the copper directly affects the data transmission from the green box. And in my local village, North Cadbury, everywhere that is more than 400 metres from the green box has had to connect themselves direct with fibre to get the connection speed. Richard is nodding because he has the same problem. And I just wanted to highlight that for local people if you were on the original fibre connection, because the problem is quite often the copper. I guess, Matt, you didn't know we had directional aerial with the data box.
No, I wasn't aware of that, Councillor.
Okay, well, that's something we need to look at. Yes, Richard Wilkins, Councillor Wilkins.
Just to say, I was nodding, not because I necessarily have the same problem, Councillor Hobhouse, but to note the fact that the work that was done to get fibre direct in North Cadbury and the surrounding areas, I was very much aware of. And I'd just like to answer on the lobbying front. Lobbying happens, as you know, in lots of different directions, and not least with our MPs. It's worth noting that Sarah Dyke, Gideon Amos, and Rachel have all made comments in the Commons regarding the poor service we have in rural areas on broadband. So it's important we continue to lobby, and from every aspect, from the council through to our MPs, and it's very important we continue to make it clear to government that we will not be forgotten in this area, because it's so important.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else wish to raise any questions? No, well, I would like to thank, I'm sorry, Alan Bradford, Councillor Bradford.
I'd just like to ask a question. Are other parts of the country experiencing these sort of things, or are we just a special one, Somerset done?
Matt?
No, it is felt across the country, but predominantly in rural areas. So I was going to say other comparable rural areas. There aren't other comparable rural areas, but it is, yeah, it's a national problem in rural areas. So the more remote rural you go, the more expensive things are, the poorer the coverage is, but your baseline, the starting point. So I suppose the perfect storm that we're all dealing with is because of the existing traditional infrastructure. People who live in rural areas have the slowest speeds and also the most intermittent speeds, to pick up on Councillor Hobhouse's point. They are also the most expensive to then reach with fibre that would alleviate that problem. So they're starting from the poorest baseline, but they're actually the danger is that they will be the very last to be reached. But no, it's not exclusively a Devon and Somerset problem, but it's particularly acutely felt in this region.
Thank you very much, Matt. I just want to say, I would think the isolated areas and isolated people, they're the ones who want help most sometimes, because when you're packed together, next door neighbour, no problem. When you're isolated 6-7 miles away from each other, farms, etc., in the countryside, it becomes a real issue as people get older.
Absolutely.
And this face the fact that people are getting older. They're becoming an elderly generation.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Carry on, Matt.
No, I was just agreeing.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that, Alan. Just a quick question. Is this under the remit of the UK government in Scotland and Wales, Northern Ireland? Do you know, Matt?
It is, although it works slightly differently in each of the devolved authorities, devolved nations. So Scotland has Project Gigabit Build, but it also has its own subsidised build programme, which it runs in parallel, and there are kind of interleaving contracts. I think in Northern Ireland, it is exclusively BDUK and Project Gigabit. Wales is a little bit more similar to Scotland insofar as there is Project Gigabit activity, but there's also money in from the Welsh government, who kind of do their own thing in parallel. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was a relevant question, because they are some of our remotest parts of the country, particularly northern Scotland, and certainly on my visits, been quite accessible to broadband in northern Scotland, and I wonder why we in Somerset are facing this particular problem. Anyway, Matt, I'd like to thank you very much for this presentation. Paul Hickson would like to have a word.
Thank you, Chairman. I think just to say it's a really helpful discussion and some excellent questions asked. I think out of it came some flavours for me that I think we can take away as a result. So obviously recognising there is some delivery remaining to be commissioned by the CDS partnership. I think we dwelt more on the kind of longer term and the role of the council and the partnership beyond that. So I think I heard 4 broad strands that role might include, all in the kind of influencing and understanding kind of categories. So firstly, really understanding the position within Somerset in terms of connectivity. Councillor Mansell talked about the map. That's obviously a part of it, isn't it? It came up elsewhere. Overbill was part of that as well. Secondly, understanding the marketplace, both in terms of providers and relationships with them, and changing technology as well. So I think that for me is the second part. Obviously, a third part around engaging with, influencing, lobbying government. I think that's at several levels. So to remind government, as we've had in the last part of the discussion, that in geographies like ours, kind of the position with connectivity is a kind of a critical infrastructure issue. So that high level messaging that this is an ongoing priority agenda for us. Sometimes you get the sense there's a job done, move on mindset a little bit around that. And then more kind of next level down in terms of engagement with government, BD UK, about the delivery of the kind of programs that they do have. And then more at the local level, influencing and optimizing delivery, whether that's through vouchers, through the Project Gigabit contracts and so on. So making sure we are active and influential in terms of best outcomes from delivery. So it's my kind of reflections on what the four kind of flavours of our kind of role looking ahead be.
Thank you. I think it's provided quite a summary. I was simply going to say we've announced we've shared the problems of concerns about rural areas. I was going to say exactly the same as Councillor Bradford, that it's those areas that are most cut off in other respects, for example, bus services, that also are suffering from a lack of broadband. And as we move towards more essential moving online of our services like banking and so on, this is where it comes in. It's very important that we do get it, and it's disappointing that some areas don't have it. I'm following up on Dave Mansell's point as well, particularly about the need for very specific mapping as far as our areas are concerned, because we as ward councillors will be picking up on that. We'll be the ones that people come to when they want to find out whether they're going to get it, when they're going to get it, or if they're not going to get broadband at all. And we have to be well armed to answer those questions. And the matter of lobbying, I think, has been answered, but it looks like our MPs are the best way forward with that. I'm also intrigued, but I'll ask him out of the room about Henry's aerial. Directional aerial, wondering if there's something that can be gained by developing that as a strategy, but that I think that'll come in another discussion. Alan, I'll give you the last word.
Well, it's going to be brief, actually,
Yeah.
but I don't want to go from this meeting not feeling I should have asked the question. Right, I'm very topical. All this flooding we're having in one place and the other at the moment has a big effect on broadband.
That's a good point. I don't know.
Because I see
Matt still
roads and areas. I know there's cable underneath the ground, etc., covered in water for not 1 week, 2 weeks, perhaps 3 weeks. I'm sure long term that has an effect. I'd just like to know from the experts very briefly if it has.
good point. Matt, you were able to answer that.
Well, this is going to sound like a slight cop-out, but it's not supposed to be. So we have reporting from our providers, like Openreach and Airband, on their network resilience, and we get that on a monthly basis. We actually had that meeting yesterday, but it was essentially looking back at figures for probably from 6 weeks ago and back. So the next time we have that, which will be in a month, we will get the network resilience figures for the particular period. And I would actually be able to answer your question, because we get a sense of network uptime, percentage uptime, on where there were outages, what caused them, where they were, and why. So I think we'd be in a position to answer that. And Amanda also has a point.
Amanda, would you like to come in at that point?
Yeah, it's only a quick one, and this is certainly anecdotal at the moment from my memory, is that from Wessex build is very much mole plough, so it's actually underground going through fields, and they've been building in some very rural areas. Kingsbury, Piscaby, I think, is one of the areas that they've been building in very previously flooded areas. We haven't noted any particularly loss in service, so it does seem to be resilient. But again, as Bat said, we can provide some actual figures there from Irband itself and indeed Wessex if needed.
Thank you for that. I think
both. Thank you very much.
we've got to, I really must call this to, I'm going to give, you both want to have a word, Dave and Dawn, but please make it quick. We've now overrun quite considerably on this, so, and I've summarised, so as quickly as you can, please.
Yeah, good summaries, Paul and Martin. Thanks for those. I think there's just 3 specific points which Matt mentioned. I wonder if we could just reinforce those. One was extending the voucher scheme beyond March 2028. Another was supporting BDUK requests to extract more of the funding from government to enable their programs to proceed. It sounds though there's a money blockage there. And then the final point, another one which Matt mentioned, and he may have mentioned other good ones, but anyway, he also mentioned about the final 1% and having a strategy for them. So if those 3 could be specifically, and I'll tell them again afterwards if anyone wants.
Paul is noting those. Thank you very much. And Dawn.
Yeah, just very briefly, I'm just wondering if this committee can make a recommendation for Matt and Amanda to come back with some of the more specific data for our areas to this committee at some point.
Yes, I think that's a very good idea. If we could ask Amanda and Matt to come back to it may not be until the new year. It may be a different scrutiny title, different scrutiny body, but Matt's raising his thumb there, and so thank you very much. We'd like to invite you back. I'm not sure that we'll have time to look into this between now and the beginning of May. Thank you all very much. Just one note, Councillor Dingwall has sent his apologies, but he is online smiling away there. So if we could note that. And I'm going to move for a comfort break now, if that's okay. Thank you very much. 10 minutes, please. Very much. So we're now effectively going back to agenda item 6, which is the Somerset Council first consideration report and section 102 report. And it's James Dival, Head of Climate and Natural Environment, to present the item. Please, James, good to see you.
Thank you, Chair. So thank you for allowing me to bring this today. It's there really for awareness and understanding of our duties and responsibilities under the Environment Act 2021, and really the high level work streams that we're trying to do to address this. The reporting as such is very much an operational function normally. So through non-key decision papers, this will be our governance route for sign off. But I know through past conversations with this committee, there's a real keenness to understand the types of work which is involved in our service plans, that sort of transparency really, and what work that we're doing across the council to try and address it, the direction of travel sort of moving forward. So the journey as such in terms of our reporting functions is quite challenging, if I'm honest, to be able to understand what are the key reporting functions that we need to do under the Environment Act, and some of it as well linking into the NERC Act as well. But it first started in 2024 in January, which really highlighted a conversation, and it was really looking at the key components really around considering what we do to conserve and enhance our biodiversity, as it says on the screen, agree policies and specific objectives based on our consideration, and act to deliver our policies and achieve our objectives. So this conversation was across council, a number of officers from different services, really looking at behind us and to a certain extent the old councils, what was the policies and processes that we had in place, the strategies, where are we right now, but looking at those key components moving forward. And within the report, the committee report, I've highlighted the first consideration report as well, just for that transparency and understanding of what did it involve really there. So, well, what I'm here really to discuss today is the 102 report. As I said, it's one of those key documents that we need to provide to sort of highlight how we are discharging our duties underneath the Environment Act. We call it the 102 report because it's part of the section 102 of that act there. And what we're trying to do with this is to provide that high level actions, really I've done it in a terms of a RAG rating, so that, you know, where are we in terms of discharging those actions? Green is we're on course or we've delivered. Yellow, it's an ongoing process, and red, there are still those areas that we need to move forward on and trying to address. So it's identifying those key work streams, not just from within my service, but other services like planning, for instance. Neutrality is one of those areas that we've highlighted on there as well. The key components, as I've seen it as part of the reporting, as we've said, is around strengthening and improving the existing duties to conserve and enhance our biodiversity. One key element of our duties really is around the adoption of the local nature recovery strategy. We've had Steve in the past, one of my officers, presenting that, going through the governance channels, and fingers crossed it will be adopted in March of this year at Executive. That will act as really the vehicle for a lot of our programmes and projects and deliverables to sit under. But there are other things that we can do as well by adding in appropriate policies and objectives, you know, to other emerging areas. And we've discussed some today, you know, just in the conversations earlier. This is my sort of mind map of madness of how it all really sort of comes together. But really what we've tried to sort of highlight in terms of the reporting process is we've got the Environment Act first consideration report. So that state of play, setting the direction for the council, how we're going to address the duties under the Environment Act. That leads then into the reporting side of things, the right-hand side, the 102 reports. And that is really, as I said, the plan, the status, and what the deliverables that we're going to do. But it links across into what are some of those deliverables. Mentioned the local nature recovery strategy, how it sits with future local plan, as well as areas like the BNG policy guidance that we've delivered, the woodland creation and the tree strategy, resilience and adaptation roadmaps, nature markets, which will be another future agenda item, no doubt, for this committee once we've completed in the next couple of months, but also some of the operational factors as well. Our management of designated sites, national landscapes, and the plans that we create around that supports, you know, some of the outcomes around 30 by 30, but also the quality standards that we're looking at around local wildlife sites, local nature reserves. So our green estates is actually a non-statutory service, but in terms of statutory functions is helping us to just discharge some of those agenda items. I think a key component is that as well. It's also the vast number of volunteers who are supporting us to actually discharge those key areas, especially in areas like Ham Hill, Burrow Dunes, Wiltdock and Stockmore. There's a huge number of people who are helping us day to day, working alongside some of those conservation managers that we've got, our green estate rangers. And then it will follow through into the final reporting process as we see it at the moment, which is section 40. It's a more formalised report. And then we also have ongoing DEFRA reporting as well around 30 by 30, biodiversity net gain, local wildlife size status. There's a number of different things ad hoc that we get asked for reports on, and that goes through, all of which really keen to provide that SharePoint, that data set really for future meetings to the Scrutiny Committee. So as I said, back to the 102 report, it's quite an organic action plan, because there are things which will be added to it. There are things that we might merge into other work streams, but the current status really of what we're trying to deliver will always be there. It acts as a bit of a high level plan for my service delivery plan, so working with the various different services underneath me, but also that sort of sense checking across council as well. These are, I won't go through every single one, but these are the key components which have made up the 102 status report really. And finally, sort of the next steps. So as I said, section 40 is the more formal report as I've seen it. This one comes not under, this comes under the NERCAP, which is the Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act 2006, if I remember. This needs to be completed by March. So as part of the process, it will be added to a non-key decision paper, but suggestion, Chair, if you're happy, I was going to add it as a information only report to a future scrutiny function. So, when you actually see section 40, there won't hopefully be a surprise of what is this. You'll understand its relation to our reporting process. Some of the key areas that I'm really looking forward to trying to provide is more transparency in publications of these work streams, which is embedded in this action plan. We've got improvements to our website, so we're working with the digital team at the moment to try and readdress how it's presented, how easy it is to access, because some of my service areas are quite sporadic across the council's website. So we're really keen to try and provide that ease of access to what's going on. The climate and nature team, we're also working heavily on our data sets as well and data intelligence. So there'll be easier and more available data and our positions and its impact moving forward. In terms of deliverables, as I've said, sort of post March 26, hopefully the local nature recovery strategy will be adopted, and that will then move into an implementation plan phase, a lot of which around our discharges of our duties will be embedded within that plan. There are areas of other work streams working alongside that around nature markets or nature finance, as a lot of people are aware of. We're hoping to get that work with our consultants WSP completed around August time. That will be a really, I think, a really good piece to be able to bring to a future scrutiny committee, but it's our aims to actually bring in private funds really to help us to invest into nature recovery actions and some of the actions that we've got embedded within this plan. Also, obviously, our national landscapes management plans, I'm hoping the last two will be completed by March 26. We've had presentations from the national landscapes here explaining what that actually involves. Some of those outcomes as well will be embedded within our 102 and our section 40 reports. And then obviously it's continuation of the 102 report. So that's the key bits really, more for transparency. I wasn't going to show the actual action plan. I think it's within the report, but if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to take it, Chair. I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, thank you, James. That's succinct, but absolutely to the point. Thank you for that. I've got Henry and then Dawn and then Dave. Yes, and Alan. Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, James, for a very good presentation. I have a number of questions, as you can probably guess. First one is, how are you going to define the baseline? Where is the data? Who is going to collect it? And then to be able to work out what your improvement is, if you understand where I'm coming from. The second question is one that we've already had words about, which is where you get the planning money and you can't put the improvement area in the red line, you're transporting the money elsewhere. And I would like that to be looked at. Thank you.
James.
So two key bits there. The baseline very much relates to the local nature recovery strategy. That is being worked on at the moment. You're completely right. It's quite challenging to understand what is currently our baseline in a number of work streams across the board. And that is going to be something before we move forward to the delivery plan that I know Steve and our graduate team are working on quite heavily now, because the performance measures need to be in place before we actually put in some of those action plans. There is baselines in terms of our biodiversity net gain in certain particular sites, but the data set is still something which is quite vast when we're looking at a local nature recovery strategy. So I would suggest actually that's maybe something I could ask Steve to bring back once the delivery plan's in place, the performance measures, and understanding what those baselines are. We can provide that transparency. But you're right, it's going to be a challenge to actually do, but it's something that we need to do. The second question around red lines, I associate to biodiversity net gain, so offsite contributions. That's something at the moment that we are where it is current policy in terms of the challenges that you've highlighted in terms of the planning BNG guidance. We are trying to understand that for ourselves in terms of Somerset Council, because we obviously have to play to the same rules and be able to understand our own needs for our own development. So education, housing, for instance. So we've added that understanding and to really a walkthrough phase of how do we take it from sites which we need to create biodiversity net gain all the way through to markets in part of the nature markets work stream with WSP, so that we're trying to identify what that pathway is, what that roadmap is for ourselves as Somerset Council to bring our own biodiversity net gain units to market and the challenges that we need to do that. So there's a never ongoing piece, I think, is the highlight there. I think the challenge you had highlighted is it's very hard to be able to go back over some of the guidance is already established, and it needs to really follow suit as the feedback I had. But I think the guidance is something that we can review as we're going through this process.
Okay, thank you. I've got Dawn Johnson next.
Hi, thank you for the report. I'm just thinking planning really, and it sounds like this is going to particularly feed into the new local plan. But I'm just wondering, is there any way this will be being incorporated in the determination of planning decisions over the time period between now and the local plan being completed?
So I can't talk for my planning colleagues, but one of the key things around the local nature recovery strategy and a number of these work streams is that it influences the local plan. So, you know, it's going to be a key influencing document moving forward is the local nature recovery strategy. Some of these work streams anyway, that planning policy are already heavily involved in and working alongside. So biodiversity net gain guidance was actually led, you know, by the planning function alongside ourselves. Nutrient neutrality, you will see as some of those actions there are key deliverables by the planning team themselves. So there are actions which the planning policy are fully embedded in, but some of these individual documents like the local nature recovery strategy needs to influence the local plan. And that was kind of part of my mind map, I think, there of how does it influence not just that core document, but the other work streams that we're actually doing. And I think that's an ongoing piece of work that I need to do with the planning team and ensure that we're getting the most out of that local plan in terms of nature recovery and really discharging our duties under the Environment Act. Does that help?
Yep.
It does. The period I'm concerned about is between now and that local plan being completed, and whether any of the work will be becoming actioned with regard to planning policy in that interim period.
I'm just going to put my very lightly worn planning hat on as someone who many years ago studied as a planner. So that the LNRS document already is a consideration for planners to use as part of their development management decisions. When it is endorsed by the council next month, that will give added weight to it as a document. And you know, to extend that point, that the evidence in general, which James is referring to here, is there for planning practitioners to use in development management decisions as the council undertakes its caseload effectively. The trick, I guess, as James has alluded to, is maximising awareness and understanding and kind of being conversant with what the information and the strategy provides. that's where the ongoing work between the two teams is really important, so that we get to the best possible position.
Thank you very much. The next person I've got is Councillor Dave Mansell.
Thank you. Henry's already covered baseline and monitoring, sort of connected to that. I just wondered whether page 26, I think it is. Yep, 26. There's the government targets there for in relation to this about halting decline in species abundance, etc. Can I ask, will the Somerset contribution be to these national targets? Will that be identified and part of what we're measuring towards?
Apologies, I'm just trying to understand which document out of the three that you're referring to.
Okay.
Consideration one, the overall report, or the V4?
Yeah, it's page 26. So if you've got the same things on
26.
mod.gov. So and it's entitled Main Report and Supporting Information. It's the second page of the report.
Okay, sorry, 2 secs.
There's targets for 2030 and 2042 there, and a series of bullet points.
Oh, yeah, I see. Sorry. Can you just say the question again?
Yeah, sure. So it was just asking whether you will be identifying the Somerset contribution towards those targets, and will that be something that you'll be working towards?
Yeah, so in terms of the Somerset wide, that's where the local nature partnership comes into play, and very much working in collaboration. I see very much the report initially as Somerset's council's duties, but actually we also know that there's a much bigger picture here in terms of the broader partnership and how we are working collectively towards those national targets, 30 by 30 in particular, and we'll be capturing that information through CERC, very much the Somerset Environment Record Centre, and how we can best sort of align the broader collective contributions that we're bringing towards this. Does that make sense?
So yeah, I think what I've taken from that is that yes, we will be measuring towards what we're doing there, but I think you haven't said that there'd be targets. I have a feeling there should be. A rural area like Somerset should walk it. Surely, if Somerset can't do it, the country's in trouble. So
a lot of the targets will come from the local nature recovery strategy as part of that delivery plan, and we'll be able to spell it out quite clearly there. One of the areas within the plan that you'll see as well is around the priority species list and that review. So that was something which come up earlier on in terms of one of the pieces of work that we need to do. We're working with the LNP and the CERC to actually review that list, and that will help inform some of those delivery plan targets, actions and performance indicators as well. A lot of it is nearly, we could second guess which is going to go into that delivery plan from the strategy, but really we just need to get the strategy delivered, consult with our broader partners, bring that delivery plan, to bear. And actually, I guess it's an ever agenda item for a future meeting, isn't it? Is highlighting what that delivery plan is and what the performance targets are related to that.
Alan Bradford, Councillor Alan Bradford, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's quite a lot of talk on this the last 6 months. Been a member of the Quantock Hills and Parrot Drainage Board, etc. One morning, don't interfere with nature. And I'll tell you why. Northmore, you just had Northmore flooded. The 361 coming over from the other side from Baltimore, Walford Link, etc., there. Now those moors have been reasonably drained, reasonably farmed for the last X number of years. And you've got talk Natural England at the moment of flooding them and returning to what they were. You'll never do that because people interfered with nature 30 years ago. That's what messed it all up. Now, I'm going to suggest to you that if those moors had been semi-flooded now, with that water coming across from Kirriemoor into Northmore, the Bridgewater would have been flooded. Moorland Ford Gate would have been flooded. Chadmead would have been flooded. you'd have had something out of control because you'd been interfering with nature. You best let them know moors farm themselves. That's what they always done. They flooded a little tiny bit, they dried out, the birds were there, no birds there now because you interfere with things, flooding it all out. And birds aren't going to nest on a wet nest, are they? You see where I'm coming from? I lived on the edge of them moors for 25 years. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I've seen it every day. And I hear so many people talking on the television now, to be honest with you, you haven't got the experience that local guides had and senior guides that how it was and how it all works. And it just frustrates me sometimes, but I'm in the habit of not upsetting anybody unless I really got to, so I keep my mouth shut. But just be careful of interfering with nature. Be very, very careful. Be careful. I hear a lot about house building, but what's going to happen? If we don't agree to some of these houses and national government's going to move in and you're going to have a lot of houses where we don't want them. So sometimes it's better to go a little bit with the flow and get some things done. I think that's how I sort of view things. There's the general bog down. I'll use the word bog down. Things aren't moving as fast as they should do. And by the time you've all made your minds up, the prices of product gone up now 20, 30%, putting extra pressure on people all across the board. But nature does play a big part in all our lives. And we aren't doing too bad. I don't think in Somerset. You've got the Stewart levels, everybody about the Stewart levels, that was created. You've got Wilstock and Stockmore, of which I'm going to take a little bit of credit for, because I was in charge of that for 7 or 8 years when I was mayor of North Petherton, and I used to get it in the neck every month. So what's going to happen, Alan? What's going to happen? Look, just be patient. Just be patient. If you're going to create these things, and you know, James, you've got to be patient, right? That's just what I've had with Wilstock and Stockmore, and they've got something coming down there that's good. They've got a good working group, all coming together. Sorry to harp on, but I'm talking from personal knowledge and my experience of life.
I don't think it's.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There you go.
That's all right. I just wonder if James got any has any response to that.
I was just going to say, Wilstock and Stockmore, fantastic site, and actually is going to be an area that we do designate into a local nature reserve. That will help us towards some of these targets, you know, around by 30, and providing that designation will enable us to measure and monitor a lot more. It is a fantastic site, and the volunteers there in particular have really been a driving force, working alongside WWT as an agency and also our Green Estates Rangers there. In terms of the Ramsar sites and levels and moors, it's an area which I know has multiple views from multiple different agencies. So in terms of the action plan, there are two actions on there. One was around the business case of hosting the authority for the landscape recovery, which the Scrutiny committee asked me to develop, and I'm still continuing to develop. The other one was really the review of the current documents that we've currently got in play, because there are a number of different agency views on the levels and moors, from levels and moors, where are we, recovery plan 25 to 26. I could go through the various different documents, and part of what I need to do is just understand where are we from the point of view of other risk management authorities, you know, in terms of the water side of things, but also Natural England's views, other conservation group views on the Ramsar site. So it's going to be an interesting jigsaw piece to try and bring together and understand what could be the direction of travel for the levels and more. It's a challenge.
Yeah, as you say, there's multiple different views on this. Alan is I think how many hundreds of years did you quote when you just said that, Alan? 300 years. See, nobody else in this room can go back 300 years. Well, I'm pulling his leg somewhat.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, again. Get rather excited about these things when you go back a long time. But those moors have never changed that much, but interfering with nature has changed the last 20 years. So it's a bit like a sponge, a moor like a sponge. Also, you got a sponge in your hand, all right? If that sponge is dry, When it floods, it'll absorb. When it's wet, it will not absorb. It will flood. It's common sense. 2 words, common sense. Sorry, James. Anytime you talk to me, you know that.
I hope he does. No, seriously. Seriously, because I don't think anybody in this room has got your experience. Well, perhaps Helen, I don't know. Perhaps some of you have. Steve, sorry. Well, if he's not, I've been led down a garden path, that's for sure. Okay.
Stones at anybody. Natural England took on management of this about 18 months ago.
I'm letting you go, Alan.
Sorry.
You're on your hobby horse now.
Well, no.
And or your soapbox.
And they started cutting down willow trees. That's the only tree on the moor, because willow's like what? Wet ground? Well, where's the brains in that? You want about nature recovery, but this is the first mistake straight away. So where are them birds going to go when they want to nest? They just can't go on the moor, can they?
Yeah.
If you want a tree to grow, plant a willow on the moor and you'll grow anywhere. Isn't that right, Henry?
You provoked Councillor Hobhouse into asking a question, so I'll take it.
I'm not asking another question. I've already asked the question which is tied to this, which is that Natural England took over that moor 18 months ago with absolutely no base knowledge. And they still have no base knowledge. And you cannot improve the biodiversity or anything without knowing where you're starting. And that's basically Alan's point.
You need experience. You need the experience.
I do think that's a very good point. Thank you very much. No, I think it's a very good point. And James, I know, has taken that away with him, grinning benignly as he is at the moment at the back. And I've now lost all track of how I'm going to summarise that debate. So I'm just going to say I think we've taken it all in. And thank you very much, James, for presenting it. And you're drawing a lot of different areas together and dealing with all these outside agencies. I don't envy you, because I think we all have our views on some of the outside agencies that we rely on for different things. And good luck with that. So thank you very much for that report. I'd like to move on. Item 8, first annual scrutiny report. Ayushi, is there anything you'd like to say on this before we move on?
Just that, because I'm sitting next to Councillor Mansell and I've seen his notes on it. So I know that I will have to go back and make edits before it goes to the full council agenda. So, I mean, I do understand, based on the discussions we had relating to the outcome tracker and the confusion with the travel plan and the local transport plan. So it is some of the edits that I will be, adding to.
Well, I mean, the point, just so that you don't worry too much, the point of bringing it to this committee is that around the table, people will spot things that are not in it, or perhaps are in it they didn't expect to be in it, and they're often things that are important to us as individuals that might not be fully reflected. So I'll take that first and then go back to my introduction. So Dave, well, I think you've been introduced by Ayushi, and you'd like to make some suggestions.
Okay. Right. So, and I noted what's said. Okay. I'll quickly note them, and to do with task and finish groups. I'm nearly wondering whether task and finish groups in our minutes and things is, running a running gag that I'm not entirely in tune with, but or just catching up with. But actually, I think we do need to make sure we recorded things correctly. So we can talk about it later, but just noting them during the meeting. Page 10, I think we've got a task and finish group wrong in point E. Similarly, page 13, it looks like 5A, which is actually the one referenced earlier and repeated here. I've got one other point. That I wonder whether you should do your introduction first, Martin, but I did just I'll risk doing it now. Yeah, okay. And it's what page is it? 15. And it's on the climate vision, and it's another place where I think we've dug ourselves just a little bit of a hole, which we probably shouldn't have dug, is what I'm tending to feel. And it's got mention about the committee asked for a review of the 2030 target, which several of us had asked. And I can't feel that comfortable with quite how it's been sort of recorded here. I'm sure there's nothing ill toward intended, but there's been a reference to oh gosh. Yeah, even if the 2030 target is misreferenced, the trouble was that comment came after the committee had debated it, and I just feel it's a little bit wrong. It sort of watered down what the committee decided to do.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, okay.
That's right. I
Yeah.
missed that one, but I remember we discussed it. And
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Are you done? Oh, thank you. Right. Okay. Anybody else? Well, there. Thank you for the report. Now, if you've seen my introduction, it's self-explanatory, but I do feel I ought to say in front of this committee, as you know, this scrutiny committee won't exist in its current form in May, and that it's going to be conjoined with it's going to be called Environment, Place and Communities, isn't it? And for me, I mean, we've been talking as scrutiny chairs about the way forward and what the new committee is going to take on. My point was at the last meeting that I don't really feel we can do that unless we get the new chair, new vice chair in place for that committee, that they've got to be the people that run with it. And as it's a combination of two committees, then inevitably there are different contenders for those roles, I presume. And I feel I ought to say it's in the report that I haven't waited to be consulted or waited to be asked. I think it's got to the stage now where we do need people in post to do that. And I've made my position clear is that, frankly, it's not a job I want. I fully accept the findings of the review that we had on scrutiny. I fully accept the fact that if we're going to combine scrutiny committees and bring them together, then inevitably communities and climate and place had to come together because they're non-statutory. They're the non-statutory part of what we're scrutinising at council. So for me, it was, I think, inevitable once we decided we were going to review scrutiny, that this would happen. I started as a scrutiny chair in our first year of this council as chairing environment, and then it became climate and place, and now we're adding communities onto it. I have big reservations as to whether the remit is just too large. I may be wrong, but I can't go into it. I cannot put myself forward to be considered as a chair or perhaps a vice chair if the case comes up, as the case should be, of a committee over which I simply have no real confidence. And I'm willing to be proved wrong, but I don't think I can go forward with that. So I've written to Bill Evans and I've withdrawn my, I've told him that I don't wish to be considered. And I hope the matter of who is going to be appointed to the new committee going forward is resolved quickly. And of course, it's effectively a new committee. It's a new council year. There may be quite a big reshuffle of members. So I'd just like to make that clear to everybody. Obviously, I'll be saying my my thanks at full council to those of you. But between those online and here, I'd like to thank you for the amount you've contributed. It's been a really quite a difficult year. We've postponed a couple of meetings because reports weren't ready. I've made it clear. There's lots of outside agencies, as James has pointed out, that we have to deal with. Bringing people in, promising Councillor Rigby that we'll get the police in to tell us all about the M5 and the hold-ups there, and actually not being able to track them down. They're very elusive. All these things are minor frustrations really. But the fact that we had to cancel 2 meetings because reports weren't ready, we've replaced those 2 meetings and we've had to have another 2 meetings. And there was some criticism of cancelling those meetings, but we've actually had 8 meetings. We've scheduled 8 meetings, not 6 in this year, which I think indicates just how big and how broad our remit is. And it's going to get bigger and broader. And for that reason, I feel I would rather not bring it forward. So that's my view. And that's all I've got to say on the matter. And I'll take any questions or observations on this report, other than Dave's. Thank you, Mike.
Can I just thank you for your service in the chair for the time that you've been doing it, Martin? You've done a very fair job and brought in subjects that are of interest to all members. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. I've brought in things that I've been asked to bring in, and I'm going to say this. I do hear sometimes that some scrutiny committees are a little bit quiet and diligent and don't discuss a great deal. I could never say that about this committee. Alan.
Hello, Martin, again. Right. I just want to say the longer this committee have gone on, the stronger it's grown. To start off with, we struggled, let's be honest. But we had things thrown at us, and a lot of it does get thrown at this climate and place committee. And we've handled it in the right sort of way, I think, under your chairmanship. But to start with, I didn't think I was going to get my feet under the table. But I have. And the longer it's gone, people can speak freely. They understand what they're talking about. A lot of people do now, I think, to start with. I don't think people understand what they're getting into. So it takes a little bit of time to get to know people and get to know the committees. And then it's nice to see people's faces. But what I am going to say this morning, I'm sorry, bit of a devil, but that's it. We had a gentleman on there this morning, Rob Burrow. I've never met him. And I didn't see his face. He came on as RB, right? And I think that's not very good going forward. It's nice to see people's faces, nice to see people's eyes. Sorry, I'm old-fashioned type, and that is the way forward. You know, I could stay home and go on a meeting like that, and I'm not being critical. It's just an observation.
Yeah, actually, yes, it is a good idea. I said I probably put people off putting their cameras on initially because somebody had their camera on early. And maybe they didn't. It is a good idea to do that. Some people prefer not to do that. Depending on how many people you've got online, the bandwidth can be effective, but probably not in this particular issue. But yeah, thanks for your points.
Nothing personal. It's just the way things should be done.
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. That it was a new committee effectively, and so you know, getting going, finding out a remit, and prioritising what we want to do was quite difficult. Richard Wilkins.
Yeah, Mike jumped into my grave really and said pretty much what I wanted to say. Well, no, well, it depends how this committee feel like later on. I don't know, but no, really appreciate the work you've put into this committee and actually the diligent way in which you've brought different aspects up. I do have a sort of question, and maybe Scott would be able to help with this, and that is, given that nobody in the whole council knew about Councillor Bradford's farming aspect, whether he's actually declared it at all.
I've always called you our rural correspondent, and I think you fulfil that. I fulfil that brief admirably. Thanks, Richard. Is there anybody else wishing to comment? No. Well, can I then with the amendments that Councillor Mansell has recommended? Can I accept that you're all happy to accept those recommendations, and that we will therefore present that, and perhaps Aishi, when you've noted them, would you copy Councillor Mansell and myself and Councillor Hobhouse into that, just to pick up the amendments. So thank you, and thank you for your kind words. We can move on, I think. Agenda item 10. Oh, no, sorry, 9. Items for information and AOB. Now, I think we covered the AOB earlier on that we were going to bring up. Does anybody have any items for information? No. Good. 10, climate and place scrutiny forward plan. I think that's self-explanatory. If you look on your notes, and Scott, did you want to say anything to bringing this forward?
Thank you, Chair. Again, it's the current representation of what's on the committee's forward work programme. Clearly, I think as you've already intimated, there will need to be a piece of work that's done on behalf of that new scrutiny committee that takes on board this committee's functions and scrutiny communities, just to look at its overall work programme from June 26 onwards. But again, in the stewardship role that all of you are performing at the moment, again, any views that members have on that forward work programme, again, would obviously be appreciated.
Thank you, Scott. I'm looking at it now. I do like the highlighted yellow comment. New. It's sort of a bit like going into a supermarket. It's they do stand out. We've seen what we've covered in this meeting, and there are several issues to come up. I don't know. I'm hoping that they are all on schedule, and it is actually my intention to hand over to the next committee a clean sheet. I would like us to have dealt with all of these issues. I don't know if Paul can answer this one. Are we any closer to the M5 incident management? Are we any closer to a commitment from the police on this one?
To be honest, Martin, I don't have any information about that and follow up. It's not something that's a day-to-day matter for me.
Yeah, Mike, do you know?
I looked in my emails recently and found the first email that I wrote on this subject to Alan Jones when he held the role in transport, asking for answers to this question, was 9 years ago. So I think I've been quite patient. I've lost my patience now, and I've got Duncan to write in his capacity as chief executive to the chief executive of National Highways and to the chief constable saying, look, come on, we've been asking you to turn up for ages. I'll be honest with you, I wasn't massively satisfied with the reasoning given last time. I know there'd been a really tragic incident on the motorway. I highly doubt that the people involved in that incident on the motorway were the policy people that we wanted to speak to here. It's taken far too long. It's the main road through not just Somerset, but feeding into the whole of the southwest. And when it's closed for extended periods of time, it has a huge impact on the economy. And it's in that role with my economic development hat on that I really want to see these people. I want to ask them the questions about what is going on the M5 such that it is closed now 75 times a year. 1.5 times a week there's some form of closure on the M5. And then I want to hear from the police about what they can do to speed up the management of those closures when there's an incident. We deserve those answers. We're not getting them.
Yeah, I think did we invite them to this meeting or the one before? I can't remember, but they pulled out of that one. Yeah. Alan Bradford.
North Pelham Town Council did get a better response. Actually, they came and see us about 6 months ago because I brought up a full council. You remember? I brought up a low council, and the police actually responded. We had 4 guys turn up one Friday afternoon, and one particular spokesman, I can't think of his name now. Oh, we're going to do this, I'm going to do that. I thought, oh, we want a winner here, want a real winner. And what's happened? Nothing. I'll rest.
My lord. Yeah. Any other comments? Yeah, Dave, Mansell.
Okay. Yep. Thanks. So noted the new forward plan, which is online, and I am content with that. What I feel, I'm afraid, a little less content with is what's happened to what was on our forward plan before, and this has happened this has happened previously. I sort of keep raising these questions just about every time, and we never get a response. And I really do think we must get a response this time. Now, so I've got up the forward plan from last time, and we've got some items here which I'm pretty certain were put on firstly by officers, although I was really pleased to see them when they first came on. And then I thought, yeah, that's just what I want to hear about. I look forward to those reports. And I believe they were put on in December 2024. So they've been there, you know, for ages, and they were on the last forward plan that we had. There's four in particular I'm picking out. There are a few others, but you know, they're not the ones I've been trying to get attention to. So one is on climate partnerships and review of networks. We were indicated we were going to get a report on that. I'm really interested to hear that report and find out what's going on. There's green financing. I think that's coming anyway, and actually it's sort of been mentioned. So I've got the sense that that one's coming. So perhaps that one is being covered. The next one is what was originally put down as 9-month reviews for the energy plan and for the climate and what I'm calling nature service plan. And we've not had those. And I perhaps will point out that the energy plan put more than a year. It took over a year to get it to executive when, you know, constitutionally it may only take a couple of months or so. And again, that was a constant push. And now it's a constant push to, you know, find out what's going on, what's happening. And all of these are connected to the climate emergency, which, you know, at one time we were trying to drive forward and take forward at pace, and it's absolutely stalled, you know. And well, there is work going on, but, you know, getting these reports telling us what's happening, I'm really quite frustrated, and I'm keen to see what's happening. So can we please get them on our agenda, and can we please get some really clear information when they're going to be there? Because, you know, this going back now, December 2024, and we still don't know what's happening and no sight of them, and they've even dropped off the new forward plan.
Thank you. Yeah, James.
So you mentioned the nature finance. I think I highlighted August. It's been very much trying to look at the needs assessment of what we actually need as a council. It's a lot of work, if I'm honest. That's why it's been delayed to this point. It will be, I think, country leading. You know, the people we're working with WSP are, you know, some of the leading lights in nature markets, nature finance. So that will be, I think, an exciting piece to bring in August. The climate partnerships, we've done some initial views and looking on roadmaps. We could bring that piece of work forward. I guess it's the next steps. That's the challenge at this moment in time of how we move it from an options appraisal point of view and what we've currently got in place to a larger, more strategic approach to Somerset Council, how it links with the other partnerships. So I think that's why I haven't necessarily brought my findings, because it needs a bigger piece of work with our corporate strategy teams. There's that bit. The energy plan, I would actually disagree. I think we've brought a lot of information recently. The energy investment plan we took to executive, we brought to this committee just a few months back. We provided an update and current status, what is up within the plan moving forward. We also added in an update into our vision. So the likes of Mark and Cara and the team have provided a lot of information, reviewed the contents of the scrutiny task and finish group and what we were going to add in there, what was included. I guess the only thing that we haven't provided is the detailed service plan, but that's really an operational practice of what we follow. So in terms of update of what we've delivered, I think one of the first things I was ever told here was give me as much transparency and awareness of what's going on. And I think we have, you know, so in terms of what have we delivered against the energy investment plan, I would say this year we've done 2 reports in particular I could refer back to.
Thank you, James. Dave?
If I may, I'm not clear on what is happening with the recommendations, and I'm asking for the recommendations. What I think we got was a report of what the team had done, and that was interesting, but the energy plan contains specific recommendations, a number of them to go to lead officers and to the executive. What I'm expecting from the review and the report back is to saying what's happening with the recommendations that we made, and then that's where I feel we are still lacking. I'm sorry, and it's been. I thought it has been on our forward plan, and I've raised it just about every meeting since December 2024. So, you know, we're now getting a response now, you know, a long time later, but I don't think it's addressed the recommendation. I really believe that still needs to come back to us. What is happening with the recommendations that we made, please?
James.
My honest assessment is actually, I thought the last couple of reports we've done on the energy investment plan and the climate, team in general have addressed some of those recommendation plans. Some of the other actions are long-term plans. They're the recommendations to influence and planning, looking at a decarbonised village. I think there was one. There's things which aren't going to happen within a 1 year remit. It's a long-term service plan and approach. We've embedded it within our service plan, so they are key actions that we're working towards. But everything that we've done, we've highlighted in terms of the green, amber, red status, what we've done to date, what we're continuing to do. And I could go back to some of the scrutiny reports and reference them if I need to, Chair. But I think we've done quite a bit on the energy investment plan.
To take it forward then, perhaps, because I mean, clearly seeing the service plan, which again has been on the agenda on the forward plan since December 2024, just to spell it out, because I'm not sure it's clear, I'm a bit frustrated. I hope, that sense has come over. It is now 1 year, 3 months since that was put on the forward plan. We have still not got a date for that service plan. Now, I'm trying to put it out gently. We would like that report, please, and we would like a date for it. Can we please have it? And I have raised this each time. I don't think I'm being unreasonable. This is a long time to wait. Now, with the energy plan, James, can I suggest we have a Teams meeting then? Let's go over the recommendations. It may help when we see the service plan, and I will then be able to understand how you're taking them forward. But at the moment, I don't. And there are specific recommendations in there, a number of them. I would like to see how we're going. And again, I don't think that's unreasonable. It's the function of this committee. I don't believe I should be having to get this pointed about this. It should be happening. And not only that, officers put it on to start with. Why did they even put it on if they didn't want to deliver it to us? But James, let's have a chat and let's go through the recommendations and see what's coming. And I hope they will be reflected in the service plan. Thanks.
Well, yeah, and I'm picking up there. There's it's the specifics involved here, aren't there? Rather than general. James has picked up on some of them, and you do need to have a discussion to pick up the specifics of what is in there, what isn't in there, and how that will impact on the service plan. Your points are taken. Thank you very much, Dave. Henry, does anybody else have any other matters to raise regarding this? No, but I thank you for putting it together. There's several things coming up which I'd really like to see. I mean, I'm worried, of course, that some of these things will drop off the schedule between now and we've got 2 meetings left, haven't we? But in particular, I think the flood reports was going to be a very much updated view of phosphate policy. EV cross-channel pavement channels decision report. That's a favourite one. I think that we're really keen to see that in April. Thank you very much. Ayushi.
The EV cross pavement channel report, it is mentioned in the forward plan as April because that is the last meeting for this committee as it exists. Between the officers and myself, the communication has been that it would be later than April, but I ended up putting it there because I couldn't push it back any further on the way the current setup is on the website. But just to be clear about that, it's going to be much later, June most likely.
I think going on a limb here, I fully accept if the it's going to take a lot longer to get that report together. But my wish was this: if it doesn't come to this committee, it comes to the new committee by June, so that they can consider it, because it's a very important issue. And of course, throughout the time that Henry and I have been chair and vice chair of this committee, we've had to make decisions or help with decisions that involve what goes on the agenda, what doesn't come on the agenda, what reports come forward, what can't come forward. And sometimes we miss things, or sometimes we prioritise things, perhaps without referring, on the spur of the moment. So if there are things missing, obviously our apologies, but this is what the forum is for bringing them back. I think the important thing to take forward is that when something is brought up, we're not in a position of constantly forgetting it the next time we set an agenda. And that has happened. And I think, that reflects on all of us, not all of you, but, those of us that set the agendas, that we say, yes, something should come forward at the next meeting, and the next meeting comes along and we've let it slide. Okay. Any other comments on that? Well, if not, then I'm very happy to, I think that's a closure of the meeting, isn't it? My God, it's actually ahead of time. The next meeting will be on Thursday, the 5th of March at 10 a.m. in the Luttrell room here at County Hall. Thank you all very much for coming along, and I look forward to seeing you then.